You don't belong here.
The skyline of Dallas glittered behind floor-to-ceiling glass as the penthouse pulsed with wealth and influence. Oil magnates, venture capitalists, foreign investors. Every conversation carried numbers large enough to change cities. At the center stood Rafael Duarte. "Hello, beautiful family. Welcome back. Tell us where you're watching from and the time there." Portuguese billionaire. Impeccable tuxedo. Calm authority in his voice. Men listened when he spoke. Women watched when he moved. He had built his Texas empire in under a decade, and tonight was meant to celebrate expansion. Beside him stood Nia Caldwell. Deep brown skin glowing under crystal light. Structured black gown tailored to precision. Natural coils swept into a regal twist. She stood tall, not clinging, not shrinking. She belonged in any room she entered. A senior investor laughed loudly. "So Rafael, when do we attend the wedding?" Glasses lifted. Smiles widened. Rafael smirked. He swirled the champagne in his hand, taking his time. The room leaned closer. "Wedding?" he repeated lightly. A pause. Then he chuckled. "Wife her? She is beneath me." The words did not explode. They sliced. Conversations died mid-sentence. A fork clinked against porcelain and stopped. Someone inhaled sharply near the bar. Nia heard every syllable, not through noise, through silence. Her fingers tightened around her champagne flute. The thin crystal trembled. She felt heat rise up her neck, but her face did not change. Public humiliation, delivered casually. In front of power, Rafael laughed softly as if he had offered clever humor. "She is exceptional," he added smoothly. "But marriage requires legacy. Legacy." Every eye shifted to Nia. Shock hit first, then pride. And the questions settled over the room like heavy air. What would she do? The silence did not fade quickly. It thickened. Conversations that once flowed with confidence now stalled in unfinished sentences. A soft jazz track continued in the background, but it sounded distant, almost inappropriate against the weight of what had just been said. Nia did not move at first. She felt the heat rise beneath her collarbone. Not embarrassment, not weakness. Impact. The humiliation was precise. Rafael had not raised his voice. He had not insulted her intelligence. He had attacked the position. Rank, worth, beneath him. In a room filled with men who measured everything in hierarchy. A venture capitalist near the window shifted uncomfortably. His wife looked at Nia with something close to pity. A younger tech founder stared openly, trying to decide if this was cultural bluntness or calculated arrogance. Rafael remained relaxed. He sipped his champagne. He expected the room to laugh it off. To assume dominance required occasional sharp humor. He expected Nia to absorb it quietly, the way she had absorbed smaller comments before. Adjust, smile, maintain composure. But tonight was different. Tonight, the insult carried an audience. And witnesses create memory. Nia's fingers tightened once around the stem of her glass before she placed it gently onto a passing tray. The faint clink echoed louder than it should have. She straightened her shoulders. Her pulse slowed deliberately. Inside, something shifted from hurt to clarity. Public exposure can break a person, or define them. If you were standing in her place, with power watching and pride wounded, would you respond immediately? Or would you wait? Comment below. Nia lifted her gaze and locked eyes with Rafael. The room held its breath again. Rafael held her gaze, confident the moment would dissolve. He had always believed rooms followed strength. And strength, in his world, meant control. Control of money. Control of narrative. Control of who stood beside you and why. He expected compliance. Instead, he saw calculation. Nia's eyes did not shimmer with tears. They did not drop to the floor. They studied him. Carefully. Around them, investors pretended to adjust cufflinks and check phones, but no one resumed conversation. The skyline behind the glass reflected back into the penthouse, doubling the scene like a mirror of consequence. Rafael gave a half smile. "Relax," he murmured under his breath, low enough for only her to hear. It was humor. Humor. The word landed poorly. Because humor does not isolate someone in front of influence. Humor does not question worth in a room where legacy is currency. Nia felt the wound clearly now. Not loud, not chaotic. Precise. He had not attacked her character. He had attacked her eligibility. And in Dallas high society, eligibility was everything. A hedge fund partner cleared his throat. I'm sure Rafael didn't mean. But Rafael raised his hand slightly. He did not need rescuing. That gesture told the room something else. He believed he was right. Audience confusion deepened. Was this cultural arrogance? Was it ego? Was it a strategy? Why would a man engaged to a woman diminish her publicly? And more importantly, would she protect his image? Or protect herself? Nia drew in one slow breath. Her pride was wounded, but her composure was intact. And composure, in a room like this, was power. Nia stepped closer to him. Not aggressively, not dramatically, deliberately. Close enough that the space between them felt charged. Close enough that anyone watching understood this was no longer casual conversation. Rafael's jaw tightened slightly. He had not expected movement. He had expected retreat. The chandelier light caught the diamond on her engagement ring as she lifted her left hand briefly, adjusting a loose strand of hair. The gesture was small, but symbolic. The ring glimmered under 100 watching eyes. Public commitment, public insult. She let her hand fall calmly. The tremor in her fingers had disappeared. Across the room, a Russian investor whispered something to his companion. A Dallas oil heir leaned back slowly, arms folded, studying the shift in posture between them. Power was recalibrating in real time. Nia's voice, when she finally spoke, was even. No raised tone. No sharp edges. Just clarity. You are right, she said softly. A ripple moved through the room. Rafael blinked once, surprised by agreement. But she was not finished. Marriage does require standards, she continued, her gaze steady on him. Now the air has changed. Not explosive. Measured. Calculated. Rafael sensed it too late. Because tone matters more than volume. She was not defending herself. She was positioning herself. The guests felt it, a subtle shift, an invisible line being drawn. What would she say next? Would she apologize for not meeting his legacy, or redefine it entirely? The room waited, and for the first time that evening, Rafael did not look entirely certain. Nia held his gaze. No tremor, no apology, no raised voice. Marriage does require standards, she repeated calmly, which is why I would never accept one where I am considered beneath the man asking. The sentence did not echo. It settled. Rafael's expression shifted first. A flicker. Quick, controlled, but visible. Several guests inhaled sharply. Someone near the balcony let out a quiet, impressed exhale. Nia did not look at the crowd. She kept her focus on him. You measure legacy by bloodline, she continued evenly. I measure it by character. The words were not loud. They were surgical. A murmur traveled across the room. Investors who moments ago aligned with Rafael now studied him differently. Not because he had wealth, because he had miscalculated. She reached for the engagement ring slowly. Not in anger, not theatrically. She slid it off and placed it gently into his champagne hand. Crystal met diamond. A soft click. In my world, she added, her voice steady. Partnership stands level. Silence deepened. The skyline shimmered behind her like a witness. Rafael looked down at the ring resting against the gold rim of his glass. The symbol of control now rests outside his authority. He had expected embarrassment. He received composure. He had expected retreat. He received standards. Nia turned slightly, not rushing, not fleeing. And as she walked toward the exit, every eye followed her instead of him. The power in the room had shifted. But this was only the beginning. 16 months earlier, before the silence, before the insult, before the ring touched the crystal. It began at a charity tech innovation panel in downtown Dallas. The ballroom at the K. Bailey Hutchison Convention Center buzzed with investors, nonprofit leaders, and startup founders. Screens displayed projections about clean energy expansion across Texas. Cameras flashed. Microphones adjusted. Nia Caldwell stood near the stage reviewing her notes. She was not there as anyone's guest. She was a featured speaker, founder of a minority-led STEM initiative, pushing coding access into underfunded Dallas school districts. Her program had gained traction. Grants, media mentions, results. Rafael Duarte attended as a sponsor. His Portuguese energy conglomerate had just acquired a renewable subsidiary in Texas. He was expanding influence in the American market and needed strategic visibility. Supporting local tech education aligned with his brand. He noticed her before she noticed him. Not because she was loud, because she was composed. Deep brown skin against a structured ivory blazer. Natural coils framing her face. No exaggerated gestures. No need to perform. When she stepped onto the stage, the room shifted subtly. She spoke clearly, confidently, without rushing. Access is not charity, she said into the microphone. It is infrastructure. If we want innovation in Texas, we invest in minds that have been overlooked. Rafael leaned back in his seat. Most speakers at events like this praised donors. Nia challenged systems. He smiled faintly. After the panel ended, guests gathered near the reception tables. Rafael moved through the crowd with quiet authority until he stood in front of her. You speak as if you are building a nation, he said, accent smooth and measured. She met his gaze without hesitation. I am, she replied. Attraction did not announce itself loudly. It began with respect. Their first conversation did not feel rehearsed. It felt equal. Rafael asked direct questions. Funding models, scalability, measurable outcomes. He expected passion. He received precision. Nia explained her framework without shrinking her vision. We partner with 3 Dallas districts, she said. Retention rates increased 20% in 1 year. Students who had never touched code are now building applications. Rafael studied her more closely, not just her appearance, her certainty. Most founders he encountered softened their tone when speaking to billionaires. They adjusted their language, sought approval. Nia did neither. You negotiate like an investor, he observed. I negotiate like someone who understands leverage, she replied calmly. He laughed softly. There it was, the spark. Across cultures, across industries, across power structures. He offered to schedule a private strategy session to explore partnership. She accepted, but not eagerly, professionally. Their second meeting took place at a quiet restaurant in uptown Dallas. No press, no public display. Just 2 people discussing numbers over espresso. His hand brushed hers once when passing a document. He did not remove it immediately. She noticed. But she did not flinch. The attraction built slowly, not rushed, not dramatic. He admired her confidence openly. You do not seem intimidated, he said once, studying her. Should I be? She asked. His smile deepened. He found her confidence rare, unexpected. The word lingered beneath the surface, unspoken but present. Unexpected that a black woman from Dallas could command rooms with data and strategy. Unexpected that she met him eye to eye. Subtle imbalance does not start as dominance. It starts as fascination mixed with surprise. Their partnership expanded before their relationship did. Rafael funded 2 new labs through her initiative. Press releases followed. Photos, interviews. Dallas media framed them as a rising power couple in tech and philanthropy. Private dinners turned into longer evenings. Longer evenings turned into conversations that stretched past midnight. He spoke about Lisbon, about growing up in a family that valued legacy above comfort, about expectations placed on him before he turned 25. She spoke about South Dallas, about public schools that lacked resources but not intelligence, about watching classmates fall behind not from lack of ability but lack of access. They were different in origin, but aligned in ambition. He admired how she held her ground in meetings. When a board member questioned her projections, she responded with data. When a sponsor suggested narrowing program access, she countered with a long-term growth strategy. After one such meeting, Rafael leaned toward her and said with a low smile, "You argue like a lawyer." "I argue like someone who wants results," she corrected. He laughed again. There was admiration in it. But there was also something else, a subtle correction. "You are exceptional," he said once as they exited an event. "Not typical." The compliment sounded polished, but it carried comparison. Not typical of whom? Not typical of what? Nia noticed the phrasing. She stored it quietly. Because imbalance does not appear as cruelty at first. It appears as praise wrapped in hierarchy. And still, the attraction grew. He liked her strength, as long as it did not challenge his position. She liked his vision, as long as it respected her own. The first time he introduced her to his inner circle, the room felt colder than the Dallas winter outside. It was a private dinner at a Highland Park estate owned by one of his European investors. Long table, crystal glassware, conversations switching between English and Portuguese. Rafael kept a hand lightly at the small of her back as they entered. Possessive, proud, calculated. "This is Nia," he announced smoothly. "Founder of the initiative I mentioned." The men nodded with polite curiosity. One woman smiled thinly. "How refreshing," she said. "Community work?" Nia did not miss the tone. Community work, as if it were quaint. Rafael squeezed her waist slightly. "She is ambitious," he added, voice amused. "She believes she can change systems." Laughter followed. Soft, dismissive. He meant it as a charm, but charm often disguises hierarchy. During dinner, Nia contributed intelligently to a discussion about renewable infrastructure. She referenced Texas grid data. She challenged an outdated assumption about distribution cost. The table quieted. One investor blinked in surprise. Rafael smiled, proud but slightly uneasy. "See?" he said lightly. "Unexpected." Again, unexpected. Each time he used the word, it carried the same undertone. As if excellence from her required explanation. As if she stood outside the standard he was accustomed to. On the drive home, she asked calmly, "Why do you call me unexpected?" He glanced at her briefly. "It is admiration, but admiration should not sound like an exception." The imbalance was small, subtle, easy to dismiss, yet it lingered. Weeks later, at a private cocktail reception overlooking the Dallas Arts District, Rafael stood with two European associates discussing expansion into Houston. Nia joined them midway through the conversation. Rafael placed a hand on her waist, drawing her in with practiced ease. His accent softened as he spoke. "Gentlemen, this is Nia Caldwell," he said smoothly. "The brilliant mind behind my Texas Education Partnership." My Texas Education Partnership. She noticed the phrasing. Ownership hidden inside praise. One of the men raised a brow. "Ah," he said, studying her with mild curiosity. "I did not expect." He stopped himself. Rafael chuckled before the man could finish. "She surprises people," he said lightly. "In a good way. In a good way." The compliment carried a quiet boundary. Impressive, but outside the norm. Nia smiled politely. Poised, unbothered on the surface, but she felt the subtle shift again. Not equal, not fully. Presented as impressive, yet framed as an anomaly. The conversation moved forward, but something had been revealed. Rafael admired her confidence, her intelligence, her presence. Yet every introduction contained surprise, as if her competence disrupted expectations. As they stepped away, Rafael leaned closer and whispered with a teasing smile, "You always shock them." She held his gaze. "Why should they be shocked?" she asked calmly. He laughed softly. "Because you are unexpected." There it was again. Foreshadowing disguised as charm. She smiled. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet question formed. Was she his partner? Or his exception? Cultural tension did not arrive loudly. It entered quietly, disguised as guidance. 3 months into their relationship, Rafael invited Nia to a private gala hosted by a European investment group visiting Dallas. The venue overlooked White Rock Lake, draped in candlelight and tailored elegance. Before they left his penthouse, he studied her reflection in the mirror. She wore a deep emerald gown, structured and powerful. Her natural coils framed her face, bold and unapologetic. He stepped behind her, adjusting the strap gently. "You look stunning," he said. She smiled at their reflection. Then his tone shifted slightly. Not harsh, not cruel. "Perhaps for tonight," he added, "a sleeker look would feel more refined." Refined. The word floated in the air between them. She met his eyes in the mirror. Refined, how? He hesitated, choosing language carefully. "The guests are traditional. They value presentation. Presentation, as if her current presence required correction. It was not an order. It was a suggestion, wrapped in concern. Nia turned back to the mirror slowly. She had walked into boardrooms with this hair, closed deals, delivered speeches, secured funding. But tonight was different. Tonight, she represented him. She removed the hairpin securing her coils and began smoothing her hair back into a tighter style. Rafael watched quietly. When she finished, he nodded once. Approving. There, he said softly. Perfect. The gestures seemed small, minor, yet it marked the first visible adjustment she made, not for comfort, but for acceptance. The cut was slight, but cuts accumulate. The gala unfolded with polished smiles and controlled conversation. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished floors. European investors discussed legacy portfolios and family trusts that stretched back generations. Names carried weight. Lineage carried more. Rafael moved through the room with ease. His Portuguese heritage aligned seamlessly with the old-world energy of the event. He switched between languages fluidly, posture straight, gestures precise. Nia stayed beside him, her hair now pulled back tightly. Her expression was poised. Her gown was immaculate. A woman with an accent from Porto studied her briefly. "You are from Texas?" she asked, voice pleasant but curious. "Yes," Nia replied calmly. "How interesting," the woman responded. Rafael usually surrounds himself with heritage. The word lingered. Nia smiled politely. "Texas has heritage too." Rafael chuckled lightly, as if smoothing tension. "Nia brings a modern perspective," he added. "She is learning the traditional spaces, learning, as if she were in training." Later, near the terrace, one of Rafael's associates clapped him on the shoulder. "She carries herself well," he said quietly. "You have refined her." Refined her. Rafael did not correct the statement. He only smiled faintly. Nia heard it. She said nothing. Small cuts rarely draw blood immediately. They build pressure under the surface. On the drive home, Rafael glanced at her. "You handled yourself beautifully tonight." Handled. She turned toward the window, watching Dallas lights blur past. "I always do," she replied gently. He nodded, missing the weight behind her tone. The adjustments were subtle, but they were becoming expected. The next adjustment came quietly. It was not about hair. It was about voice. Rafael had been invited to speak at a private energy roundtable in Frisco. Closed doors, high capital, no press. He asked Nia to attend. "Observe," he told her lightly. "These rooms operate differently." She raised a brow. "Differently how?" He hesitated. "Less direct." She understood the implication. During the meeting, a senior executive dismissed a proposal from a minority-owned firm without reviewing its data. The decision was wrapped in polite language, but the bias was clear. Nia leaned forward slightly. "Have you reviewed their retention metrics?" she asked calmly. "They outperform two of your current partners." The room stilled. The executive blinked. Rafael's posture tightened. He smiled quickly. "Nia sees opportunity everywhere," he said smoothly. "It is one of her strengths." Strength, but also interruption. After the meeting, inside the elevator, his tone shifted. "You must be careful," he said quietly. "Careful of what?" she asked. "Timing. You cannot challenge every decision publicly." Her gaze remained steady. "I challenged the data." He exhaled slowly. "It is not always about data." There it was again. Unspoken expectation. Adapt. Observe. Moderate. She nodded once, though she did not agree. Small corrections began stacking. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just steady reminders that his world required a certain shape, and she was being asked to fit it. The pressure became more visible as invitations multiplied. Rafael's calendar filled with legacy dinners, foundation galas, and private estate weekends hosted by families whose wealth predated Texas oil. Each event came with an unspoken dress code, tone code, behavior code. Before one particular gala in Highland Park, Nia stood in the dressing room, adjusting diamond studs she had rarely worn. Her reflection stared back at her. Hair pressed smooth again. Makeup softened. Gown tailored to quiet elegance. Rafael entered behind her, straightening his cufflinks. He studied her reflection carefully. "You look perfect," he said, satisfied. Perfect. Not powerful. Not bold. Perfect. She held his gaze in the mirror. "Do I look like myself?" she asked calmly. He stepped closer. "You look elevated." Elevated. As if her natural presentation existed below something, she did not argue. Instead, she adjusted her earrings and turned toward the door. At the gala, she moved gracefully. She laughed lightly when appropriate. She allowed Rafael to lead introductions. She moderated her tone. And she noticed something. The more she adapted, the more comfortable he became. The more comfortable he became, the more he expected adaptation. When an older investor complimented Rafael later, he replied with a smile, "Nia understands presentation now." Now, as if she had been unfinished before. She felt the sting quietly. She was adjusting. But she was not disappearing. Not yet. Small cuts were becoming a habit. And habit builds pressure. The argument did not happen at a gala. It happened in private. Late evening. Rafael's penthouse. Dallas quiet beyond the glass. Nia stood near the kitchen island reviewing notes for her next foundation expansion. Rafael poured himself a drink, watching her from across the room. "You were sharp tonight," he began. She looked up. "Sharp?" "With the Henderson family," he clarified. "You corrected them twice." "I corrected misinformation," she replied evenly. He exhaled slowly. "There is a way to do it without appearing confrontational." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Confrontational?" He set the glass down. "Nia, these families value tradition. You represent me in those spaces." There it was. "Represent me." She placed her pen down carefully. "I represent myself," she said calmly. He stepped closer, frustration finally surfacing. "When you stand beside me, you carry my name, my reputation, my legacy. And what do I carry when you stand beside me?" she asked quietly. Silence stretched. Rafael's tone hardened just enough to reveal truth beneath polish. "You must understand how to represent me properly." Properly. The word hung heavy, not suggestion, instruction. The room felt smaller. For the first time, she did not see admiration in his eyes. She saw expectations. And expectation, when repeated enough, becomes condition. She held his gaze, steady but wounded. The unseen cracks were no longer subtle. They were structural. Rafael's closest circle did not live in Dallas full-time. They rotated between Lisbon, London, Dubai, and occasionally Texas when investments demanded presence. When they gathered, it felt less like friendship and more like a private council of influence. This time, they chose a private ranch outside Dallas. Expansive land, controlled access, a curated guest list. Rafael introduced Nia to the group near the outdoor terrace as the sun dipped behind the hills. "This is Nia Caldwell," he said smoothly, "founder of our education partnership. Again." A tall man with sharp features extended a hand but did not fully smile. "We have heard about you," he said, accent thick. "Rafael speaks highly." Another woman studied Nia's face openly before responding. "You are from here, Dallas?" "Yes," Nia answered calmly. "How charming," the woman replied. "Local perspective." Local. The word felt smaller than intended. Cold introductions rarely shout. They linger in tone. The group shifted back into conversation quickly, Portuguese flowing between them. Nia caught fragments. Legacy. Expansion. Marriage alliances among elite families in Europe. She stood poised, hands clasped lightly before her. Maintaining composure requires discipline, especially when you sense evaluation. Rafael laughed loudly at a joke in Portuguese. He did not translate it. He did not draw her back into the conversation. For the first time, she felt distinctly outside the circle. Not because she lacked intelligence, because the circle had boundaries. External hostility was subtle, measured, but it was rising, and she was beginning to feel its temperature. Dinner was served under soft lantern light, long wooden tables arranged with precision, silverware aligned perfectly, crystal glasses identical in shape and height. Nia took her seat beside Rafael. Across from her sat a woman named Sophia, one of Rafael's longtime European associates. Sophia smiled politely, but her eyes assessed everything. "I admire your initiative," Sophia began, slicing into her steak. Community engagement is admirable. Thank you, Nia replied evenly. Sophia tilted her head slightly. It must be fulfilling to uplift your people. Your people. The phrase floated lightly, almost gentle. Almost. Nia kept her expression steady. It is fulfilling to invest in talent, she corrected softly. Sophia's smile tightened. Further down the table, one of Rafael's male associates leaned toward him. You always surprise us, he said quietly, glancing at Nia. You are evolving. Evolving. As if selecting her marked a transformation. Rafael chuckled under his breath. I enjoy expansion, he replied. The men laughed. Nia heard it. He did not challenge the framing. He did not correct the implication. Subtle racial microaggressions rarely announce themselves boldly. They slip through conversation wrapped in politeness. As dessert arrived, another guest leaned toward Nia. You speak well, he said approvingly. She paused briefly. I always have, she replied calmly. Rafael placed a hand on her knee beneath the table. Not protective, not reassuring, restraining, a silent signal to keep the tone smooth. External hostility rose in fragments, and internal loyalty began to crack. She maintained composure, but composure is not the same as comfort. After dinner, guests moved toward the outdoor fire pit. The Texas air cooled slightly as the sun disappeared. Glasses refilled. Laughter grew louder. Stories about European estates and generational wealth drifted through the night. Nia stood near the railing overlooking the ranch land, watching the horizon darken. Rafael joined a cluster of men discussing succession planning within elite families. Words like lineage, continuity, bloodline moved through the conversation easily. One of the men glanced toward Nia. She is confident, he said in Portuguese. Rafael responded in the same language. Yes. Strong. The man nodded. Strength is admirable, but legacy requires alignment. Alignment. Rafael did not answer immediately. He swirled his drink instead. Nia did not understand every word, but she understood the tone. She understood posture. She understood when a conversation included her without including her. Moments later, Sophia approached her again. You must find this world different, she said with faint curiosity. Different does not mean difficult, Nia replied calmly. Sophia's lips curved slightly. Some adjustments are necessary when entering established families. Adjustments. The word landed heavier this time. Nia's posture stiffened subtly. I do not enter families, she said evenly. I enter partnerships. Sophia smiled, but her eyes cooled. Across the fire pit, Rafael watched the exchange. He did not intervene. He did not step forward. He did not reinforce her stance. He allowed the tension to hover unchallenged. External hostility was no longer subtle. It was testing boundaries, and internal loyalty was being measured. Silence from him spoke louder than their words. Later that evening, the group moved indoors toward a private lounge lined with dark wood and low lighting. The mood shifted from formal to intimate. Jackets loosened, voices lowered. Nia stepped away briefly to find the restroom. As she returned down the hallway, she heard laughter from a side room partially concealed by a sliding door. Her name drifted through the gap. She slowed, not out of curiosity, out of instinct. Inside, Rafael stood with two of his closest associates, and Sophia. Glasses clinked softly against the crystal. She carries herself well, one man said. But marriage is not only about affection. Of course, Sophia replied smoothly. Image matters. Image. Another voice followed. Your family in Lisbon will expect continuity. Continuity. Rafael exhaled slowly. I am aware. A pause. Then, more quietly, one of the men added, Dallas is forgiving. Europe is not. A wife must align with legacy. Nia felt her posture stiffen. Close shot in your mind. Her name hanging in the air. Laughter fading at the edges. She is impressive, Sophia continued carefully. But impressive is not the same as suitable. Suitable. The word settled heavily. Rafael did not defend her. He did not correct the framing. He did not challenge the assumption. He remained silent. And silence, in moments like this, becomes agreement. Nia stepped back before they could see her. Her pulse steady. Her face controlled. But something inside her had shifted. External hostility had now become explicit, and the test was no longer subtle. It was structural. Nia did not re-enter the lounge immediately. She stood in the dim hallway for several seconds, breathing evenly. Laughter continued inside. Softer now. Controlled. The kind shared among people who believe they are aligned. Her name surfaced again. "In Texas, it plays well," a male voice added. "But long-term, optics matter." Optics. The word struck with clarity. Rafael's voice followed, lower than before. "I understand the expectations. No defense, no correction, no declaration of partnership, just understanding." A short pause. Then someone chuckled. "You have built an empire carefully. Do not compromise it emotionally." Compromise. The message was clear. Affection was negotiable. The image was not. Nia's shoulders straightened slowly. Visual cue. Close shot of her hearing her name through the narrow gap in the door. The glow from inside touching only one side of her face. Laughter fading into a dull echo. Her posture stiffened, not from surprise, but from confirmation. She had sensed the imbalance. Now she heard it defined. Legacy. Alignment. Optics. Suitable. The conversation ended with glasses clinking lightly. Nia stepped back into the corridor shadows before anyone exited. When she returned outside minutes later, her expression was composed. Rafael looked up from the fire pit conversation and gave her a small nod, as if nothing had shifted. But everything had, because now she knew. The circle was not testing her intelligence. It was testing her eligibility, and he was allowing it. The night of the insult did not end with shouting. It ended with distance. Nia drove herself home from Rafael's penthouse. No dramatic exit. No tears in the elevator. Just silence and the steady hum of Dallas traffic beneath midnight lights. When she entered her apartment, she removed her heels slowly and placed them neatly by the door. Her phone vibrated 3 times. She did not check it. She already knew the messages would be controlled, smooth, explanatory. She walked toward her desk instead. The skyline outside her window looked different now, less decorative, more honest. Public humiliation has a strange effect. At first, it wounds, then it clarifies. She replayed the moment in her mind. Wife her? She is beneath me. The words were not accidental. They were reflective of hierarchy he believed in, reflective of a circle he refused to challenge. She sat down in front of her laptop. Her inbox glowed in the dark room. One subject line caught her attention. Global Investor Summit, Keynote Expansion Panel Invitation. She paused. The summit was the largest cross-border investment gathering in Texas. Energy, infrastructure, technology. Rafael was the headline speaker. The email continued. We would be honored for you to address inclusive innovation strategy on the main stage. Her name, independently, not as his partner, as founder. Hurt shifted slowly into something sharper. Clarity. This was not about emotional reaction. This was about positioning. She leaned back in her chair, eyes steady. Silence and comfort were still options, but so was assertion. She read the email twice, then a third time. The invitation was formal, direct, respectful. The summit board wanted her voice on the main stage, not in a side panel. They wanted her to speak on capital access, equity modeling, and long-term innovation sustainability. The same room where Rafael would headline. The same audience who had witnessed his remark hours earlier. Her phone vibrated again. Rafael's name flashed across the screen. She let it ring out. Instead, she opened the attached briefing packet. Projected attendance, global investors, state officials, private equity leaders, broadcast partners confirmed. This would not be a quiet gathering. This would be visibility. She removed her engagement ring slowly and placed it beside her laptop. The diamond caught the light from the screen. Symbol, expectation, condition. She studied it without emotion. For months she had adjusted, refined, moderated. Tonight had stripped illusion. He did not see her as equal within legacy. The summit offered something else. Platform. Identity separate from his. Her pulse steadied. This was not revenge. It was positioning. She asked herself one direct question: do I remain silent to preserve comfort, or do I stand visible and let merit speak? The laptop screen glowed brighter against the dark apartment. Outside, Dallas continued moving. Inside, something within her shifted from wounded partner to strategist. Before she clicked anything, she paused. Should she protect the relationship, or protect her dignity? Vote in the comments. Nia did not answer immediately. Strategy requires distance from emotion. She closed her laptop gently and walked toward the window. Dallas stretched wide beneath her, lights scattered across highways and office towers. This was the city she had built her foundation in, the city where her name carried weight independent of any engagement. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she read the message. Rafael, you left quickly. We need to discuss tonight. Discuss, not apologize, not reflect. Discuss. She placed the phone face down on the table. Her mind returned to the summit invitation. If she declined, nothing would change publicly. The narrative would remain his. The room would remember his words without seeing her response. If she accepted, the stage would become neutral ground, not as a fiancé, as founder. Hurt no longer burned. It focused. She replayed the ranch conversation in her memory. Legacy, alignment, optics. Then the penthouse remark. Beneath me. The pattern was no longer subtle. She walked back to her desk and reopened the laptop. Her name appeared at the top of the summit proposal. Dr. Nia Caldwell, founder and executive director, no reference to Duarte, no attachment to legacy outside her own. From victim to strategist, that was the shift. This was not about confronting him privately. This was about redefining visibility publicly. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. Once she accepted, there would be no retreat into comfort. The room would see her fully, and he would have to watch. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of her laptop. Nia reopened the summit email and scrolled to the schedule. Rafael Duarte, headline address: Global Energy and Expansion Strategy directly beneath it. Inclusive Innovation and Capital Equity speaker to be confirmed. The placement was deliberate. Back to back. Same audience. Same stage. She felt no anger now. Only structure. She imagined the room. Investors seated in rows. Media lenses focused. Translators adjusting headsets for international guests. The same kind of environment where he had laughed and called her beneath him. Except this time, the platform would not be his. It would be shared. She reached for the engagement ring again, turning it slowly between her fingers. The diamond reflected cold white light from the screen. For months, she had tried to meet his expectations. Refinement, moderation, representation. Tonight revealed something clear. Representation without equality is performance. She placed the ring back on her finger briefly, studying how it looked. Then she removed it again and set it beside the laptop. Visual cue. The diamond resting near the keyboard. The screen illuminating her determined expression. Her breathing remained steady, not emotional, intentional. The decision was no longer about him. It was about narrative. Who defines worth? Who defines legacy? She began typing slowly. Not yet sending. Drafting. Strategic language. Measured tone. Professional acceptance. Each word deliberate. The draft was short. Professional. Direct. Clear. She did not mention Rafael. She did not reference the night. She did not add emotion. She read it once more before her eyes drifted to the skyline. 16 months of admiration. 16 months of adjustment. One sentence in a penthouse had clarified everything. She placed both hands on the keyboard. Subject: acceptance confirmation, Global Investor Summit. Her response: thanked the board for the opportunity, confirmed her availability, requested technical specifications for presentation format. No hesitation in the wording. Only ownership. Before pressing send, she paused once more. This was the midpoint. Silence would preserve comfort. Assertion would shift power. She thought about the ranch conversation. Suitable. Optics. Alignment. Then she thought about the students in Dallas who called her by name when they launched their first applications. Her legacy was already forming. She clicked send. The email left her outbox instantly. Strategic reveal. No one in Rafael's circle knew yet. No dramatic announcement. Just confirmation logged into the summit schedule. She leaned back in her chair and picked up the engagement ring once more. This time, she slid it back onto her finger slowly, not as surrender, as reminder. The stage was set, and soon, the same room that watched her humiliated would watch her speak. Rafael Duarte did not know. 2 days after the summit board confirmed her acceptance, he sat inside his downtown Dallas office reviewing keynote slides with his communications director. Global expansion must feel inevitable, he said calmly, adjusting a projection graph. Confidence, drives, capital. His team nodded, taking notes. The insult at the penthouse had already faded from his visible demeanor. In his mind, it had been a moment of blunt humor misunderstood by sensitive ears. He assumed Nia would process it privately. Adjust. Return. He had sent messages. We need to align. You left abruptly. Call me. She responded politely. Busy week. We will speak soon. No anger. No confrontation. Control had returned, at least on the surface. Meanwhile, media coverage of the upcoming Global Investor Summit intensified. Billboards appeared across Dallas highways. Online features profiled keynote speakers. Rafael's image dominated the first wave. Portuguese billionaire to headline Texas Global Summit. He read the headline with quiet satisfaction. He did not scroll far enough to see the updated speaker roster. The announcement of additional panelists was scheduled for the following morning. At her apartment, Nia reviewed her presentation deck with precision. Data clean. Language sharp. No emotional undertone. She no longer felt reactive. She felt prepared. He remained unaware. And that ignorance gave her strategic advantage. The audience, though unaware of the tension, would soon witness a shift. The collision was approaching, but only one of them understood its timing. The next morning, Dallas woke up to updated summit promotions. Digital banners refreshed, newsletters sent, social media feeds adjusted. Global Investor Summit announces expanded keynote lineup. Rafael's portrait remained dominant at the top of the page, but directly beneath it appeared a second image. Dr. Nia Caldwell, founder, Caldwell Innovation Initiative featured speaker, Inclusive Capital Strategy. The announcement spread quickly through business circles. Texts began arriving. Congratulations, Nia. Big stage. Well deserved. Her phone vibrated steadily across her desk. She answered none of Rafael's calls that morning. By noon, the summit board released a short preview clip featuring her speaking at a prior conference. Her voice confident, data precise, delivery measured. Rafael's communications director entered his office with a tablet in hand. They updated the lineup, she said carefully. He barely looked up. Yes, I approved expansion panels. Not panels, she clarified, turning the screen toward him. His eyes scanned the image. Nia's photo, headline placement, main stage. For a fraction of a second, his expression shifted. You knew? The director asked gently. He shook his head once. No. The social tension began to rise quietly. Investors noticed the pairing. Blogs speculated about the dynamic. Dallas insiders remembered the penthouse comment. Rafael leaned back slowly in his chair. He did not react publicly, but internally calculation began. At her apartment, Nia closed her laptop after reviewing another media mention. Control felt different now. Not loud. Structured. The stage was no longer his alone. And anticipation had begun to build. By midweek, speculation moved beyond quiet observation. A Dallas business columnist posted a headline that circulated rapidly through investor circles. Power couple to share main stage at Global Summit. The article was neutral in tone, but sharp in subtext. It referenced their engagement, their joint philanthropy, their different backgrounds, their growing influence. It did not mention the penthouse night directly, but the implication hovered. Will they align publicly? Rafael's office received calls from 2 European associates. You did not mention she was speaking, one said coolly. It strengthens our visibility, Rafael replied evenly. A pause. Ensure cohesion, the associate added. Cohesion. Image again. At lunch that afternoon, Rafael finally reached her. You accepted the keynote, he said without greeting. Yes, Nia replied calmly. You should have told me. "It is my foundation," she answered. "The board invited me." "Silence. You understand the optics," he said carefully. "I understand the platform," she corrected. The tension was no longer subtle. It was structured. Across Dallas, summit banners lined highways. Promotional screens flashed both of their names in rotation. Radio hosts mentioned the unusual pairing. Rafael's team adjusted his speech draft, inserting subtle references to inclusive growth. He would not be caught unprepared. Meanwhile, Nia refined her closing slide. Not reactive, not defensive, confident. She was no longer responding to humiliation. She was preparing for visibility. And the audience, though unaware of private conversations, sensed something approaching. Collision requires timing. The timing was nearly aligned. The summit day arrived under a clear Texas sky. Downtown Dallas was blocked off around the convention center. Black SUVs lined the entrance. Security checkpoints moved efficiently. Media vans parked along the curb. Inside the green room, Rafael adjusted his cufflinks while his assistant reviewed his speech once more. "You will open the summit," she reminded him. "Global expansion, vision, market stability." He nodded. Controlled, composed, familiar territory. Across the building, in a separate preparation suite,
He humiliated her in public. But instead of reacting, she calculated.
Controlled, composed, familiar territory. Across the building, in a separate preparation suite, Nia stood before a full-length mirror, adjusting the lapel of her ivory suit. Structured, clean lines, no excess jewelry. Her phone buzzed with final confirmations from the summit board. "Your segment follows immediately after Mr. Duarte's address." Immediately after. Deliberate scheduling. She inhaled slowly, not nervous. Focused. Outside, the red carpet cameras began flashing as early arrivals stepped out of vehicles. Reporters called out names. Microphones extended forward. Rafael arrived first. Flashbulbs exploded in rapid bursts. He stepped onto the carpet with practiced ease, offering measured smiles. "It is an honor to lead global dialogue in Texas," he told one reporter smoothly. Moments later, another black SUV pulled up. Nia stepped out alone. Flashbulbs shifted direction instantly. Split-screen moment. 2 entrances. 2 faces. Same summit. Same stage. Different positioning. Reporters called her name now. "Dr. Caldwell, how does it feel to share the platform today?" She offered a composed smile. Innovation thrives when multiple voices are heard. Inside the building, Rafael watched her arrival on a nearby monitor. For the first time, anticipation did not feel comfortable. The audience inside the main hall began taking seats. The collision was no longer theoretical. It was scheduled. The main hall of the Global Investor Summit filled quickly. Rows of tailored suits, translation headsets, media cameras positioned along the walls. The stage stretched wide beneath sharp white lights, framed by 2 towering digital screens displaying the summit emblem. Rafael Duarte stood behind the curtain, composed as ever. He had delivered speeches in London, Dubai, Sao Paulo. Rooms larger than this, markets more volatile. This was familiar terrain. When his name was announced, applause rolled through the hall with respect and recognition. He walked onto the stage with steady confidence. Spotlight locked onto him. "Texas stands at the center of global energy transformation," he began, voice calm and controlled. "Partnership across borders defines sustainable expansion." His slides moved with precision. Charts, projections, acquisition models. He spoke about capital discipline, generational planning, long-term positioning. The audience listened carefully. Some nodded, some typed notes. It was polished, measured, strategic. He referenced legacy twice, continuity once, alignment 3 times. His delivery remained smooth, but something in the room felt slightly different. Investors were attentive, yet they were also waiting for the segment that followed. As his speech approached its conclusion, he adjusted his cufflink briefly, scanning the room with quiet authority. "True growth," he said in closing, "requires vision and careful stewardship." Applause followed. Strong, respectful. He stepped back from the podium, expression controlled. He expected to transition to the next panel. Instead, The moderator stepped forward with a slight smile. "And now," she announced, "to continue this discussion on the future of capital and representation, please welcome Dr. Nia Caldwell." A subtle shift passed through the room. Rafael's jaw tightened slightly. The spotlight moved, and the power in the room began to recalibrate. Applause rose again, stronger than before, not out of courtesy, out of curiosity. Nia walked onto the stage alone, ivory suit crisp under the spotlight, posture straight, expression calm. She did not rush. She did not glance toward Rafael as she passed. The moderator added, "Dr. Caldwell has built one of Texas's fastest-growing innovation pipelines for underserved talent. Today, she joins this stage as a strategic voice in capital access." Strategic voice. Not a guest. Not an accessory. Rafael remained seated at the edge of the stage, hands clasped lightly, expression neutral. But his jaw had tightened. Nia reached the podium and adjusted the microphone slightly. She did not begin with data. She began with presence. "Good afternoon," she said evenly. Her voice carried clearly across the hall. "When we discuss legacy, we often focus on preservation. But true legacy expands." A few heads lifted. She clicked to her first slide. A simple image. A Dallas classroom. Students working on laptops. "No market sustains itself by protecting access for a select few," she continued. "It sustains itself by widening access responsibly. No attack. No reference to anyone." But the contrast was clear. Investors leaned forward now. Some who had only politely applauded Rafael were listening more closely. Her tone remained steady, measured, intelligent, and the room began shifting. Slowly, deliberately, from admiration of polish to engagement with substance. Nia did not raise her voice. She did not dramatize her points. She presented evidence, retention rates, revenue forecasts tied to inclusive hiring models, case studies from Dallas firms that diversified supplier contracts and saw measurable growth. "Representation is not charity," she said calmly. "It is a strategy." The screen behind her displayed a projection model comparing two investment paths. Closed networks, expanded networks. The expanded model outperformed, not by emotion, by numbers. Rafael remained seated to the side, posture upright. His expression revealed nothing publicly, but those close enough noticed the tension in his jaw. He had spoken about stewardship. She was reframing stewardship as responsibility, without mentioning him, without attacking him. The room responded differently now. Phones lowered, laptops closed, eyes fixed on the stage. An energy executive in the third row whispered to his colleague, "She is sharp." A venture capitalist nodded slowly. "This scales." Nia moved to her final segment. "Leadership," she said evenly, "is not measured by who stands beneath you. It is measured by who rises because of you." The sentence settled into the hall. No accusation, no exposure. But the parallel was undeniable. A ripple moved through the audience. Some investors glanced briefly toward Rafael. Power was not being seized. It was being redefined, and it was happening publicly, without spectacle, without noise, just clarity. The shift was visible now. Slow, intentional, inevitable. Nia reached her final slide. No charts, no projections, just one statement centered on the screen. "Legacy expands when dignity stands level." She let the words sit. Silence filled the hall for 2 long seconds. Then she spoke again, steady and composed. "Capital moves where confidence exists, and confidence grows where people are valued as partners, not exceptions." She did not look toward Rafael. She did not need to. The investors understood the distinction. Her closing was not emotional. It was executive. Inclusive growth is not disruption, it is evolution. Markets that fail to adapt eventually lose relevance. Markets that elevate talent build endurance. She stepped back slightly from the podium. No grand gesture, no dramatic pause, just completion. The first applause began near the front rows. Then it grew. Stronger, louder. People stood. Not all, but enough. Visual cue. Spotlight on her, as she nodded once in acknowledgement. His tightened jaw was visible from the side stage. Cameras turning toward her rather than him. Rafael clapped as well. Controlled, measured, but the applause for her lasted longer than his. The difference was subtle, yet unmistakable. This was not humiliation. This was recalibration, and the room had felt it. Now tell me, was this revenge? Or leadership? Tell me your view in the comments. The applause did not fade quickly. It rolled through the hall in waves, sustained and deliberate. Investors who had listened politely earlier were now on their feet. Several international delegates leaned toward one another, nodding with approval. Nia stepped away from the podium and shook the moderator's hand. Cameras flashed. The spotlight lingered on her longer than protocol required. Rafael rose from his seat and approached her with a composed expression. He extended his hand. She accepted it briefly. Professional, neutral. To the audience, they appeared aligned. To those paying attention, something had shifted. Reporters at the side of the stage whispered rapidly into recorders. Unexpected dynamic, one said quietly. Strong positioning, another replied. As they exited toward the backstage corridor, Rafael leaned closer without looking at her. You prepared well, he said evenly. I always do, she answered calmly. No accusation, no triumph, just balance. Behind them, investors continued discussing her presentation. Her name surfaced repeatedly. Strategy, scalability, vision. The applause for her segment had lasted longer than his keynote, not louder in volume, but deeper in impact. Public humiliation had been replaced by public recalibration. He had introduced hierarchy in a penthouse. She had introduced equality on a stage, and the room responded accordingly. The collision had happened, without scandal, without exposure, only with clarity. The backstage corridor felt colder than the main hall. Applause still echoed faintly through the walls, but here, the air was tight and controlled. Staff members moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. Assistants whispered into headsets. Rafael waited until the door to the private preparation suite closed behind them. Silence. No cameras, no audience. Just them. He removed his jacket slowly and placed it over the back of a chair. The movement was calm, deliberate, almost rehearsed. That was strategic, he said evenly. Nia set her tablet down on the polished table near the wall. Yes, she replied. His jaw tightened. You positioned your remarks carefully. I always do. He stepped closer. You knew I was speaking about legacy. Yes. And you chose to redefine it publicly. She met his gaze without hesitation. I chose to define it accurately. His voice sharpened slightly. You made it seem as though I diminish people. She did not flinch. You diminish people when you say they are beneath you. The words landed harder in private than they had in public. He inhaled slowly. That comment was taken out of context. There was no context, she replied calmly. There was an audience. Silence settled between them. Not explosive. Heavy. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration surfacing now. You embarrassed me, he said quietly. The irony did not escape her. I spoke about leadership, she answered. You felt embarrassed. The distinction hung in the room. And for the first time since the summit began, Rafael did not look entirely certain. Rafael paced once across the room before turning back to her. You could have addressed that privately, he said. Instead, you challenged my positioning in front of global investors. Nia stood still, hands resting lightly against the table. I did not mention your name, she replied. You did not need to. His voice rose slightly now, not loud, but strained. You knew the implication. She held his gaze. You created the implication. Silence. He stepped closer again, lowering his tone. I have spent years building credibility across continents. Reputation is fragile. You do not weaponize it. Weaponize. She let the words settle. I did not weaponize anything, she said evenly. I spoke about partnership. If that threatens you, then ask yourself why. His frustration sharpened. You were supposed to stand with me. I was standing with you, she answered calmly. Just not beneath you. The line struck with precision. He looked away briefly, jaw tight. You think this is about ego, he said. It is about structure. My world operates on expectations. And my world operates on equality, she replied. His shoulders stiffened. You embarrassed me, he repeated. No, she said quietly. You felt exposed. The words lingered. Not accusatory. Accurate. The room fell silent again. And beneath the silence, something in him began to fracture. Rafael straightened slowly, but the confidence that once filled the room did not return. You think I see you as inferior? He asked, voice lower now. I think you are comfortable being above, Nia replied. The distinction was deliberate. He turned away briefly, staring at the wall as if searching for a defense that would not sound hollow. My family expects continuity, he said finally. There are standards I was raised with, and I respect standards, she answered calmly. I do not accept hierarchy disguised as tradition. Silence pressed in again. His shoulders dropped slightly. You are asking me to change the framework I was built on. I am asking you to choose partnership over position. He looked at her fully now, not as a public image, not as a strategic asset, as a woman who had just held her ground on a global stage. You did not have to do it that way, he said, but there was less accusation in his tone. I did not expose you, she replied. I did not shame you. I did not reference you. She paused. I simply refused to stand beneath you. The truth of it settled heavily. He had expected confrontation filled with emotion. Instead, he was facing calm consequences. His ego was not attacked. It was confronted, and that was harder to defend against. He exhaled slowly. For the first time since the penthouse, he did not look certain of his authority. He looked aware of his mistake. But awareness does not guarantee change. The room felt smaller now. Not because of space, because of realization. Rafael's eyes dropped briefly to her left hand. The diamond still rested there, visible, present, uncertain. You are willing to risk this? He asked quietly. She followed his gaze. I am unwilling to lose myself, she replied. He stepped closer, voice softer now. You think I do not value you? I think you value me, she said evenly. But on terms that place you above. The distinction landed again. He ran a hand over his face slowly. I did not expect you to challenge me publicly. I did not expect you to diminish me publicly. Silence, not hostile. Final. She looked down at the ring. Visual cue. Close up, the diamond reflecting light from the dressing room mirrors. Her fingers slid over it once. Then she removed it. No drama, no raised voice. She placed it gently on the polished wood table between them. The soft click echoed louder than any argument could. Ring on polished wood. Silence between them. His expression shifted. Not anger. Shock. Consequence had weight now. I will not commit to a structure where I must stand beneath you, she said calmly. The space between them felt unfamiliar, unstable, unresolved, and for the first time since they met, the engagement was no longer secure. By the next morning, the narrative had shifted. Business blogs replayed summit highlights. Clips circulated across social media platforms. News anchors referenced a defining moment on leadership and inclusive capital. Headlines scrolled across screens. Caldwell reframes legacy at Global Summit Investor Response signals market shift. Rafael's keynote received coverage, but Nia's speech received analysis. Commentators dissected her closing line about dignity's standing level. Opinion writers praised her composure. Several executives publicly reposted her clip with captions about modern leadership. Rafael sat alone in his downtown penthouse, tablet resting on the kitchen island. Headlines refreshed automatically. Phone notifications stacked one over the other. Media requests. Investor inquiries. 2 missed calls from Lisbon. He watched a replay of the moment she delivered her final statement. Leadership is measured by who rises because of you. The room's response was undeniable. It was not rebellion. It was respect. Public sympathy leaned toward her without her asking for it. She had not attacked. She had not exposed private conversations. She had not dramatized conflict. She had elevated the standard. And in doing so, she had exposed the gap. Rafael set the tablet down slowly. The applause for her still echoed in his memory. Not loud, sustained. His ego had not been shattered publicly. It had been compared, and comparison is harder to ignore. Outside, Dallas moved through its morning routine. Inside, Rafael sat alone in silence. For the first time in years, He was not managing perception. He was confronting it. By afternoon, the shift became undeniable. Investor group chats buzzed. Energy analysts referenced her presentation in follow-up discussions. A major venture fund announced a new capital inclusion initiative, inspired by Summit Dialogue. Her dialogue. Public sympathy did not arrive as pity. It arrived as an alignment. Executives posted statements praising measured leadership. One Texas senator tweeted a clip of her closing line with the caption, "This is the future of responsible growth." Rafael's phone lit up repeatedly. A European associate called first. "You underestimated optics," the man said bluntly. Optics. The same word was once used to measure her suitability. She positioned herself well, the associate continued. "You allowed contrast." Allowed contrast. The implication was sharp. Another call followed. "Your message felt traditional," a board member said carefully. "The market is shifting." Shifting. Rafael ended the call and stared at the city skyline through his penthouse glass. For years he controlled the narrative. Acquisitions, public image, strategic alliances. Now the narrative was moving without his direction. He opened a news article featuring side-by-side images from the summit. Split frame. Him speaking about stewardship. Her speaking about elevation. The commentary below favored her tone. Measured. Forward-looking. Inclusive. He felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not anger. Not humiliation. Exposure. His inner circle was no longer affirming his stance. They were questioning his positioning. And the questions were no longer subtle. That evening, Rafael received a video call from Lisbon. 3 members of his advisory circle appeared on the screen. Polished. Direct. Unfiltered. "We watched the summit," one began. Rafael nodded once. "She was strong," another added. "Strong. Not unexpected. Not surprising. Strong. You miscalculated the tone." The first continued. "Markets are evolving. Your framing of legacy sounded rigid." Rigid. Rafael leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "My position was consistent," he replied evenly. "Consistency without adaptation becomes limitation," came the response. Silence filled the space between continents. One advisor spoke more quietly. "The issue is not her speech. It is the perception of your hierarchy." Hierarchy. The word struck harder than any headline. "You cannot appear dismissive in a global capital environment shifting toward representation," the advisor concluded. The call ended without resolution. Rafael remained seated in the dim light of his office. He replayed the penthouse moment in his mind. Wife her? She is beneath me. He had said it casually, without calculation, confident that his world would absorb it. Now, the same confidence felt misplaced. Identity reckoning does not arrive with noise. It arrives with comparison. He had built an empire on structure and order, but he had confused leadership with position, and the market had noticed. For the first time, doubt replaced certainty. Not about business, about himself. Night fell over Dallas, and Rafael remained alone in the penthouse. No assistants, no guests, no curated environment, just him and the city lights stretching beyond the glass. He poured a drink, but did not touch it. Instead, he stood by the window and allowed the silence to press in. His phone vibrated again. A message from one of his Texas investors. "You handled the keynote well." But Caldwell's message connected differently. Connected differently. He set the phone down. Connection. He replayed her words again. Leadership is measured by who rises because of you. He had always believed leadership meant protection of structure, protection of name, protection of hierarchy. But protection had begun to look like control, and control had begun to look like insecurity. He moved to the dining table. The polished surface reflected the overhead lights. For a brief second, he imagined the engagement ring resting there, her hand removing it calmly. No tears, no rage, just clarity. His ego did not collapse loudly. It thinned quietly, because he realized something unsettling. The applause for her was not emotional bias. It was alignment with the direction of capital and culture. He had not been attacked. He had been outdated. And that realization forced something deeper than embarrassment. It forced reflection. By midnight, the penthouse felt unusually still. Rafael stood at the edge of the dining table, hands resting lightly against the polished surface. The city lights reflected faintly across the wood, mirroring his expression back at him. He had built his identity on control. Control of markets, control of image, control of narrative, but control had not protected him from consequence. He picked up his phone and scrolled through summit coverage one more time. Clip after clip featured Nia's closing line. Not framed as confrontation, framed as clarity. Investors respected clarity. Markets rewarded clarity. He lowered himself into a chair slowly. For the first time since the penthouse remark, he asked a question he had avoided. Why did I need to stand above her? The answer did not arrive immediately, but discomfort did. His upbringing, his circle, his conditioning. Legacy had always meant preservation of hierarchy. But what if preservation had cost partnership? He looked at the empty space across the table where she once sat during late-night strategy sessions. This was no longer about optics. It was about alignment within himself. He opened his contacts and scrolled to her name. Paused, then pressed call. She did not answer. He did not leave a voice message. Instead, he sent one line. We need to meet privately. No audience, no stage. He set the phone down and exhaled slowly, not with authority, with humility. Whether she would accept was uncertain. But for the first time, he was not seeking control. He was seeking correction. Morning arrived quietly over Dallas. Sunlight spilled across glass towers, soft and unhurried. The city looked different in daylight, less dramatic, more honest. Nia stood near her apartment window, watching traffic build below. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter behind her. We need to meet privately. No audience, no stage. She had read the message 3 times the night before. No demand, no defense, no explanation, just a request. She agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet, private lounge overlooking the Trinity River. No media, no assistants. When she arrived, Rafael was already seated near the window. No tailored performance, no public smile, no calculated posture, just a man waiting. He stood when she approached. Thank you for coming, he said. His voice carried no edge, no pride. She took her seat across from him. Silence settled briefly between them, not hostile, measured. The morning skyline stretched behind him through the glass, light reflecting off water. He did not begin with strategy. He began with the truth. I was wrong, he said plainly. No qualifiers, no context. The simplicity caught her attention. He held her gaze. I confused position with value, he continued, and I spoke in a way that diminished you publicly. The word diminished lingered. She listened without interrupting. For someone who claims to understand leadership, he added quietly, I failed to practice it. It was the first time he had apologized without defense. And that mattered. Nia did not respond immediately. Apologies deserve silence before acceptance. She studied him carefully, no tension in his jaw, no guarded tone, just awareness. You embarrassed me, he said again, but this time differently. Not because you challenged me, because you showed me who I was becoming. She let that settle. You were not becoming, she replied calmly. You were repeating. He nodded once. My upbringing shaped me to protect my legacy at any cost, he admitted. I never questioned whether protection felt like dominance. There was no audience to impress now. No circle to satisfy. Only reflection. She folded her hands gently on the table. I do not compete with your legacy, she said. I bring my own. He looked at her directly. I see that now. Seeing was not the same as changing. She understood that. I will not stand beneath you, she continued. Not in private, not in public. He did not argue. And I will not perform refinement to make others comfortable, she added. He exhaled slowly. I would not ask that again. Boundaries were being drawn clearly, not aggressively, firmly. There was no immediate softness in her tone, no rush toward reconciliation. Trust rebuilds slowly. Respect must be practiced consistently. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed something on the table, the engagement ring. He did not slide it toward her. He left it where it rested. I do not want a partnership built on hierarchy, he said quietly. I want one built on equality. The morning light caught the diamond, but she did not reach for it. The ring remained between them, not as pressure, as a choice. Nia looked at it calmly, then back at him. Equality is not a statement, she said. It is behavior. He nodded slowly. I know. You allowed your circle to question my suitability, she continued evenly. You laughed when they framed me as unexpected. He did not deny it. That ends, he said quietly. Does it? She asked. The question was not sarcastic. It was direct. He held.
I apologize.
I appreciate that, but I need space.
The question was not sarcastic. It was direct. He held her gaze. Yes. She studied him carefully. Then understand this, she added. If we move forward, it will not be as an exception to your world. It will be as an equal within it. He leaned back slightly. Then my world must evolve. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic promise, just acknowledgement. She felt the shift. Not emotional, structural. For the first time, he was not asking her to adapt. He was confronting his own adaptation. Still, she did not reach for the ring. There is no instant reconciliation, she said calmly. Trust returns through action. He accepted that without protest. Power no longer tilted between them. It balanced. Uneasy, but real. The question was no longer whether he valued her. The question was whether he would practice equality consistently. And that answer would take time. The conversation did not soften into romance. It matured into clarity. They spoke for another hour. Not about image, not about public perception, about structure. If we attend events together, Nia said, I am not introduced as a surprise. You are introduced as a partner, Rafael replied. If your circle questions alignment, you respond. I will. If you ever diminish me publicly again, she added calmly, there will not be a second conversation. He did not flinch. I understand. There was no negotiation in her tone. Only boundaries. The morning skyline brightened behind them. Sunlight reflecting off the river. The city moving forward without waiting for their resolution. He slid the ring slightly closer, not insisting, offering. She looked at it, then at him. I am not returning to what we were, she said. He nodded. Nor should you. She allowed a faint, measured smile. If we move forward, she continued, it will be slower, intentional. No hierarchy. Agreed, he said. No dramatic embrace followed. No cinematic reconciliation. Instead, she stood first. He remained seated for a moment, watching her. Not as possession, not as a symbol, as equal. Humility had replaced certainty, not fully formed, but present. And presence was the beginning of change. Outside the lounge, the morning air felt steady. Nia stepped toward the valet stand, heels clicking softly against stone. She did not look back immediately. She did not wait for reassurance. Her car pulled forward. As she opened the door, sunlight caught her profile. Composed, centered, independent. Inside the building, Rafael remained near the window, watching through the glass as she stepped into her car. He did not rush outside. He did not call her name. He understood something now. Dignity is not something you grant someone. It is something they carry regardless of your approval. Her car merged into Dallas traffic and disappeared into the flow of the city. She did not feel defeated. She did not feel triumphant. She felt aligned. With herself, the relationship remained open, not broken, not fully restored, balanced. Humility had been earned, not demanded. Respect had been defined clearly. Whether they rebuilt slowly or parted with grace would depend on action, not emotion. But one thing was certain. She would never again stand beneath anyone. Now tell me, would you forgive him after that moment? Comment your answer and subscribe for more stories about dignity and power.